July 26, 1944. Lieutenant Alfred Schreiber pushed the throttles forward on his Messerschmitt Me-262 and felt acceleration like nothing he'd ever experienced. Below him, a British Mosquito reconnaissance aircraft, one of the fastest planes in the RAF, was photographing German positions near Munich. Schreiber rolled into an attack dive. The twin UMO 004 turbojets screamed as his airspeed climbed past 500 miles per hour. The Mosquito pilot saw him coming and pushed his own throttles to maximum, trying to outrun the strange-looking German fighter. It was futile. Schreiber closed the distance in seconds, lined up his shot, and fired a burst from his 30mm cannons. He missed. The Mosquito escaped, this time. But Schreiber's combat report sent shockwaves through Allied intelligence. The Germans had deployed a jet fighter, not an experimental prototype, but an operational combat aircraft that was 100 miles per hour faster than anything the Allies possessed. This was the moment Luftwaffe pilots had been waiting for. The Me-262, the world's first operational jet fighter, finally entering combat. With this aircraft, they could intercept bombers before fighter escorts could react, destroy them with devastating firepower, and escape before anyone could catch them. The Me-262 could have restored German air superiority. But what Schreiber didn't know was that 9 months earlier, Adolf Hitler had visited an Me-262 demonstration, asked a single question, and destroyed any chance this revolutionary aircraft had of changing the war. That question would haunt Luftwaffe pilots as they watched the weapon that could have saved them sit unused while American bombers turned German cities to rubble. The Messerschmitt Me-262 represented years of German jet engine research. Maximum speed, 540 miles per hour. The fastest Allied fighter, the P-51D Mustang, topped out at 437 miles per hour. Rate of climb, 3,900 feet per minute. The Me-262 could accelerate from cruising speed to maximum in seconds, making it nearly impossible for piston engine fighters to catch. The armament was devastating. 4 30mm Mk-108 cannons firing explosive shells that could destroy a B-17 bomber with just a few hits. A 2-second burst delivered more destructive power than a 10-second burst from a Mustang's 6 machine guns. By early 1944, production Me-262s were rolling off assembly lines. Luftwaffe commanders were planning deployments against the American bomber offensive, systematically destroying Germany's war production. The aircraft that could restore German air superiority was ready. Before we continue, I'd love to know where you're watching from and what you know about the Me-262. Comment below and let me know if you'd heard about Hitler's interference with this aircraft. Then Adolf Hitler decided to visit an Me-262 demonstration in November 1943. November 26, 1943. Hitler's visit to the demonstration at Insterburg was supposed to boost morale, show the Führer Germany's wonder weapon. Engineers demonstrated the aircraft and explained the performance characteristics that made it untouchable by Allied fighters. Hitler examined the sleek aircraft and asked the question that would doom it. Can it carry bombs? Technically, yes. The Me-262 could carry up to 1,000 kilograms of bombs on external racks. But that wasn't what it was designed for. Loading it with bombs destroyed its performance advantage. The external racks created drag that reduced speed. The added weight hurt climb rate. And using a revolutionary fighter as a bomb truck made no strategic sense when Germany had plenty of conventional bombers. Engineers tried to explain. The Me-262 is optimized as a fighter. As a bomber, it loses most advantages. We have other aircraft better suited for bombing. The Me-262's value is destroying Allied bombers and fighters. Hitler's response was immediate and furious. "None of you understand strategic bombing. I don't want fighters, I want bombers. Every new aircraft will be a bomber. I want the Me-262 to carry bombs and strike Allied positions during their invasion." He was talking about the anticipated Allied invasion of France. His vision, Me-262s, would appear over invasion beaches at high speed, drop bombs on Allied troops and ships before anyone could react, and escape before fighters could catch them. It was tactically insane. The Me-262's bomb load was minimal. It couldn't hit precision targets at 500 miles per hour. Using this revolutionary fighter to drop 1,000 kilograms of bombs made no sense when it could shoot down multiple bombers carrying many times that payload. But Hitler wasn't interested in tactical arguments. The order went out: convert all Me-262 production to the bomber variant. Messerschmitt engineers protested through every channel. They sent reports to Hermann Göring explaining that converting the Me-262 to a bomber would take months of redesign. Göring, who understood air combat, agreed and tried to convince Hitler to reverse the order. "Mein Führer," he argued in January 1944, "we need fighters to stop the American bombers. Every day, hundreds of B-17 attack our factories. The Me-262 could stop them. As a bomber, it will accomplish nothing." Hitler accused Göring of cowardice and defeatism. The order stood. More than that, Hitler added a new directive: no Me-262 will be deployed as a fighter under any circumstances. Any commander attempting to use them as fighters would face court-martial. Luftwaffe fighter pilots received the news with despair. They were being slaughtered by American escorts. P-51 Mustangs were shooting down German fighters at ratios of 5-1. The bomber offensive was destroying factories, refineries, and transportation networks. And the one aircraft that could turn the tide was being forcibly converted into a mediocre bomber. By March 1944, production of operational Me-262s had essentially stopped. Instead of combat-ready aircraft, engineers were redesigning bomb racks and modifying control systems. Every day of delay meant more cities bombed, more fighters lost, and more Allied air superiority consolidated. June 6, 1944. D-Day. Hitler's vision of Me-262 jet bombers terrorizing the invasion beaches didn't materialize because there were no operational Me-262 bombers. The conversion was still incomplete. The few that did fly over Normandy dropped bombs from high altitude, hitting nothing, and accomplished exactly what engineers predicted: nothing. The Allied air armada over Normandy numbered more than 11,000 aircraft. Even if Me-262 bombers had been there in force, they would have been drops in an ocean of Allied air power. After D-Day, some Luftwaffe commanders finally convinced Hitler's staff to allow fighter variants back into production. But 7 months had been lost, 7 months during which the Me-262 could have been disrupting bombing raids, protecting factories, buying time. When Me-262 fighters finally became operational in early October 1944, they immediately validated everything the engineers had promised German ace Major Walter Nowotny, formed Commando Nowotny, and his pilots achieved their first victories against American bombers. The Me-262's speed made it difficult for fighters to intercept, and its cannons could destroy bombers with devastating efficiency. One American bomber pilot described encountering Me-262s. "They came through the formation so fast we couldn't track them. By the time our gunners realized they were under attack, the jets were already miles away. There was nothing we could do." But October 1944 was too late. While Hitler had forced the bomber conversion, the Allied bombing campaign had achieved critical mass. German oil production had dropped by two-thirds, aircraft fuel production was down 75%. The Me-262's turbojets consumed 2.5 times as much fuel per hour as conventional fighters. Jets sat on runways, fully armed but unable to fly because there was no fuel. While German pilots waited for fuel that would never come, the production numbers revealed why Hitler's delay had been catastrophic. In November 1943, when Hitler ordered the bomber conversion, Germany produced 1,000 fighters, America produced 2,750 that month. By October 1944, American production had climbed to 3,200 fighters monthly. German High Command called American production wasteful. American commanders called it mathematics. In attrition warfare, the side that could replace losses faster won, regardless of which aircraft was technically superior. Me-262 pilots understood this arithmetic. One commented, "We have the better aircraft. They have 1,000 of theirs for every one of ours. Eventually, the experts die, and there's no time to train replacements." That was when Luftwaffe Command understood they weren't fighting American fighter pilots. They were fighting American production capacity, and you can't shoot down a factory. Despite fuel shortages and overwhelming numbers, Me-262 pilots achieved success whenever they could fly. Between October 1944 and May 1945, Me-262 units claimed approximately 542 Allied aircraft destroyed. Impressive given that only about 200 jets ever saw combat. But Commando Nowotny's experience revealed the brutal reality. Between early October and late November 1944, the unit claimed 22 Allied aircraft. They also lost 26 Me-262s. More aircraft lost than enemies destroyed. The revolutionary jet wasn't invincible. Allied pilots learned to attack during takeoff and landing when the Me-262 had no speed advantage. For every successful mission, there were dozens of days when jets couldn't fly. Fuel shortages, engine failures. The UMO-004 turbojets lasted just 25 hours before requiring rebuilding. Pilot shortages. Training jet pilots took months Germany no longer had. By March 1945, operations were sporadic. Adolf Galland formed JV-44, veteran pilots flying Me-262s in a desperate final attempt. They shot down approximately 47 Allied aircraft in 6 weeks. Then they ran out of fuel, and the war ended. Post-war assessment revealed exactly how devastating Hitler's delay had been. American and British intelligence examined captured Me-262s and interviewed pilots and engineers. Their conclusion: if the Me-262 had entered combat as a fighter in February 1944 instead of October, it could have inflicted unsustainable losses on bomber formations. Captain Eric Brown, the British test pilot who flew more captured enemy aircraft than anyone, tested the Me-262 extensively. "It wasn't just better than Allied fighters," he reported. "It was generationally ahead. The gap between a Mustang and an Me-262 was larger than the gap between a 1918 biplane and that Mustang." In September-October 1944, when Me-262s were most active, bomber loss rates jumped to levels not seen since 1943. If that rate had been sustained while the Me-262 fleet grew, the strategic bombing campaign would have faced serious problems. But by October 1944, Germany's industrial capacity was shattered, fuel production crippled, and Allied fighter escorts so numerous that even jets couldn't survive. The 7 months wasted on bomber conversion had allowed the Allies to establish overwhelming air superiority. The statistics tell the story. Between October 1944 and May 1945, approximately 1,400 Me-262s were produced. Only about 200 saw combat. The rest sat at factories waiting for fuel, or were destroyed on the ground before deployment. In combat, Me-262 pilots achieved a kill ratio of approximately 4-to-1. But this should have been 10-to-1 or higher given the technical advantages, fuel shortages, inadequate training, and overwhelming Allied numbers reduced effectiveness. Compare this to the 7 months Hitler forced the bomber conversion. From November 1943 to June 1944, the Allies flew more than 200,000 bomber sorties over Germany. German fighters shot down approximately 2,500, a loss rate of 1.25%. If Me-262s had been operational and achieved conservative estimates of their potential, they could have doubled or tripled that rate. A 3-to-4% loss rate would have forced the Allies to reconsider strategic bombing entirely. It wouldn't have won the air war for Germany. Their industrial and fuel situation was already too damaged, but it would have bought time. And in early 1944, time was exactly what Germany desperately needed, but Hitler's decision cost them. Today, aviation museums display Me-262s as revolutionary aircraft, the jets that could have changed World War II if circumstances had been different. But the real circumstance was simpler. Adolf Hitler visiting a demonstration and asking whether the world's first jet fighter could carry bombs. The Me-262 story became a classic case study about political interference in tactical decisions. Leaders who don't understand warfare make decisions based on what sounds impressive rather than what works. Hitler wanted fast bombers because the concept sounded revolutionary. He didn't understand the revolutionary aspect was the speed itself, which made the Me-262 devastating as a fighter. Modern air forces learned the lesson. When the F-15 Eagle was developed in the 1970s, designers resisted pressure to make it a multi-role fighter-bomber. Insisting on optimizing it for air superiority first, the F-15's 104-to-0 kill ratio validates that approach. The Me-262 also demonstrates that timing matters as much as capability. Having the best weapon too late is functionally identical to not having it at all. Germany's jet arrived after Allied air superiority was absolute, after fuel production was crippled, and after pilot training had collapsed. Superior technology is never enough by itself. It must be deployed at the right time, in sufficient numbers, with adequate resources, and by trained personnel. Germany had the technology. They didn't have the time, numbers, resources, or personnel, partially because Allied bombing destroyed them, but more critically because Hitler wasted 7 months forcing engineers to convert a fighter into a bomber nobody needed. The fastest fighter ever built at that time, grounded by a leader who ordered it not to be a fighter at all. The lesson isn't about technology, it's about leadership. The best weapon becomes worthless when the person in charge doesn't understand how to use it. And sometimes, the most devastating thing a leader can do isn't ordering soldiers into battle. It's ordering them not to fight with the weapons they need to survive.